just chatting about stuff. Um,
Good evening, and I heard about the stuff you were chatting, and
yeah,
you know what? It's happening all across the board. Libraries are out, libraries are in, libraries are out, libraries are in. It's all across the board, and
Yeah, the Sunday opening or not opening, right? That summer hours, no, Sunday hours. I think that's
well,
the library thing,
it's
right?
uh, and this is why I really wanted to have this meeting because I really want to know what's exactly is going on. You
Is
know,
someone from yeah,
summer
someone
hours.
yeah, is someone
Um,
coming? Is someone from the library joining us or no?
no,
Good.
but I mean, Heather, I'm sure you can give us an update. I mean, like last year, they
I
were
can
cooling stations. Now this year, they're talking about having more cooling stations, but again, is that including the libraries? And what are the hours? So everything is just vague. It's like they're telling us what we want to hear, but I don't really see a real plan. And, that's what I was hoping that we can get an update on because summertime is a very important time for the children that are home and the parents who are
yeah,
home
I
taking care of the
I
kids.
I even asked one of the library staff. They don't even know. So I'll follow up again and I'll ask. I'll talk to the folks next door. I live by next to the Forest Hills Library, so I can always talk to them and ask them if they know what's going on.
No,
what
they
I can
don't.
tell
I
you
mean,
is I can share a couple of things. Christine and
okay.
I had a briefing last week with Con Edison. Well, I went to the briefing and then I briefed Christine. I briefed her the briefing. Um, that's how we work together. And one of the things that they talked about this summer were cooling centers, and they didn't mention a single change as to locations for cooling centers. Now, what will be the problem? Like in our community, we've never had a library give us Sunday service ever, which I always found really peculiar, given the fact that at least a third of our community can't use the libraries on Saturday because of Shabbos, whereas they would like to use it on Sunday because not Shabbos. But that's how it's always been in this community. And so now what we're going to have is a situation as to what, and this is what we do have to figure out. And Christine, maybe we could even add this to our district, because does Con Ed come to our district service cabinet meetings? Maybe we could just ask them now that libraries, because we've never had libraries open on Saturday, but where do they have people go on Saturdays when we need cooling stations in our community? Because I can't remember top of mind. Do you recall? You're like our institutional
Sure.
knowledge time
There
capsule.
are other places other than libraries that they do use, but I'm not
Hmm.
sure what the plan is this year. I could find out.
The only one I could think of was Petco because I just think it's so cool that they made Petco a cooling center for people with pets. That was like one of my favorite things. So
Yeah,
we do know that there's been no changes so far to the plan for cooling center. With libraries, I just pulled up. We had a little presentation from the Independent Budget Office, and we were talking about sort of the what's a peg, and you guys have heard the word peg used a lot. um and I'm sorry, I seem to be on the LaGuardia flight path tonight, but it's too warm to not have my window open. um PEG stands for Program to Eliminate the Gap. So now you know what that means, or you know what it stands for. And this is basically when they cut funds to add funds to somewhere else. So and with the libraries, this is what the Independent Budget Office reported back to us tonight. Um, they cut PEGs for libraries, $24 million for 2024 and $22 million annually thereafter, which resulted in the elimination of Sunday services. So they're not looking, even projecting. IBO doesn't appear to be projecting any change to that PEG in the next fiscal year. They're taking into account the preliminary discussions that are happening with the council right now, because now is their budget setting season, where they're getting ready to do the budget for next year. They're looking at the budget priorities that we wrote in October for next year, and they're considering what can be done. So we have not gotten any word from our libraries here that there has been a change to the services that they're providing, because again, they're keeping the same hours, that Monday through Friday, with that weird sort of late start on one particular day, or two particular, because that's that one day they stay open till 8. I think it's a Thursday. So that's what we have right now, unlike other districts that seem to have a lot of changes. I see Kevin with his hand up. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I lived in Borough Park, they had their post office opened on Sundays because there was a big Jewish community.
Mhm.
And so to your point, I'm just really surprised that, that there's no hours for libraries or post office on Sundays. I mean, and I guess my second point here is if there's not going to be Sunday services, I would really like to see like a free weekend or free Sunday access to New York City museums and cultural institutions. And I think to everyone's point, yeah, there's the budget. We're in a crisis mode, or kind of.
There
It's
are some
confusion.
museums, just FYI, that, and you may already know this because I know you are such a engaged parent, I have to say. You take your kids everywhere, which is so great. I get kind of tired. I'm like, dude, that's great. I used to take my kids to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and you don't have to pay anything. And you don't have to pay
Mhm.
anything for yourself. They will say a suggested donation because you live within the city of New York. And so sometimes guilt, I'll throw down like a tenner just because I feel guilty. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm seeing all this great stuff, but you don't have to. So that is at least one museum I know of, and we could try to kind of figure, I mean, I'm not
I
sure
started
what
looking-
other ones.
Yeah, I
Um,
started looking at so the libraries. They have the cultural pass every month,
Mhm.
and I started looking into that. And you have to reserve in advance, and they have museums where you can take your family of four to one of the museums on the list on a specific date. So it's quite interesting. So there's a little bit planning involved. It's not as universal or as free as I would
Right.
like it to be. But anyway,
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm. What I will say to you is what they will say to us is the reason we have the peg for the library is that we can't afford that. And if we can't afford that, we couldn't afford the other. But I think sometimes we should look at it as, why don't we ask these museums to do a free day once a month for families? Do it the third Friday for museums in Queens, fourth Friday, museums in Brooklyn, fifth, second Friday, and get the museums on board so that it doesn't really cost the city anything. The city is just imploring them to do these kind of programs.
I think I
Does that
don't know
make
if it's
sense?
I don't know if it's changed, but I think ID NYC allows museum entrance for free, but I don't know how many times and I don't know which ones. But
Mm,
I remember that was a big push that when people were doing ID NYC, they were like saying, "Oh, it's not just for, let's say, new immigrants or anyone else. It's for people that love museums because they had I think a dozen museums listed that you can go to for free if you signed up for the card." I don't know if it's still the case, but I remember that was
It
definitely one of the
it
things that
actually is
yeah
still active,
yeah yep
and you just have to keep re-enrolling in it, but it
right
is still active. And a lot of the schools urge the kids to
to
enroll and
go. Yeah, it's great.
participate
I
in
mean,
that.
that's a great resource that
Kevin,
maybe
have
we
you
can
looked into that?
yeah. And the other
I'm
thing
gonna get it from you, Edwin. Yeah,
yeah
the link to
Martha,
that.
can you
Yeah.
send him that information?
just
Oh,
Google
sure.
just
For
Google ID NYC and it's all there. It takes
Oh, okay.
just Google ID NYC and it'll say
Oh,
benefits
oh,
and it'll be all there listed.
IDNYC. I know what you're talking about. So here's the thing. I
Yeah.
have one. But then I would have to, like, my wife will have to get one, and then my kids will have to get one. It's
No,
a little bit, it's annoying.
Okay, no, I think
Does
it
does
allows
it
for
bring the whole
membership.
family in?
Yeah. It's not just for one person. I don't believe it's one, but a double check. Yeah, I don't know about that.
You don't
So,
have to, if the kids are underage, they don't have to get one.
Yeah,
You can actually go in, sign and request how many
Yeah.
tickets you want
but
as a
yeah,
caregiver.
and yep.
But
But again,
if the argument was made today in our
Fine.
meeting in regards to the libraries was that we're talking about all these, because Queens itself has taken in 50,000 migrants. That's at least the number that Donovan quoted today. And migrants use our libraries for the free services, free photocopies, free access to the internet, and so on. And so we're actually not helping the crisis by closing down libraries. We're not helping the homeless crisis by shutting down libraries, because that's a safe place for people who don't have somewhere to go during the day, most especially on super hot days and super cold days, to be during the day, to be left alone, to be safe. And so what I think people are trying to compel the city, the governor, the mayor, sorry, not the governor, different issue, the mayor to understand is that this is not just library in isolation. This is libraries and how it impacts homelessness, libraries and how it impacts families, families that we know. I knew families that had kids in school with my kids, whose kids would walk from school, go to the library. Mom and dad would meet them there after school and walk home, because it was a safe place for them to go for after school, even though they were just sitting there doing homework. And they knew that their kid was going to be safe, and they didn't have to pay for it, because to Kevin's point that he keeps banging the drum about 3K and just childcare in general, is that it's very costly. It doesn't matter what age the child is. So if you want your kids safe after school and you're working until 6 o'clock, the library is a great place, a safe place. So the library is a solution for a lot of the problems that we keep swatting around. Kevin, go ahead.
And we take it for granted, we might have streaming services like Netflix or Hulu, and we have all of that entertainment. But if you can't afford that, right, you can use the library to stream movies and TV shows. Like there are so many resources.
Yeah, I
by
think the library,
having access to the library.
and I think
Mhm.
doesn't the library also, is it the library or the schools? They give you laptops that you can check out as well. At least they used to.
Well, that's
Um,
another thing,
yeah.
Heather, I wanted an update, because remember they were giving free tablets
Yeah.
for students, and we somehow got overlooked on that. And I wanted to inquire again about what was going to happen in the summer, because usually that's when they initiate these programs for the kids who don't have access to school anymore, to get them a loaner tablet so they can still be connected.
I know that Christine has a meeting scheduled for the district service cabinet meeting in June. I would expect that any updates on summer programming to come from Louisa at that meeting. I know that a year ago, when we found out that, for example, 2 years ago, when we found out about meal distributions were happening at multiple libraries and weren't happening in ours, we were able to get that changed. And Louisa was great, and she addressed that for us. So we can check with her, and if we do see, or if you do see that we're not included in a summer program that the library is offering, please let us know. Sometimes they can pivot and make adjustments. One of the problems that I keep trying to raise with Queens Public Library is the fact that our district is not the Gardens. Our district is very diverse. And to not have some of these programs like the food, like the free lunches for families and so on, for children over the summer in our community is problematic. Because there's just some assumptions being made. So we will be getting that update. We just don't have that update today. We will likely get that update in our June meeting with Louisa.
And here's the thing, like if there are no Sunday services in our community, someone or some family potentially will have, like if they needed the library on a Sunday, they'll have to go to another district or another neighborhood, like Kew Garden Hills. Is there something in the budget for them to help these families with Metro cards, transportation? Like it's such an inconvenience. Like if somebody needs, like going to the library is not like, it's not like just a luxury. It's a need. It's a real need, and to not have that service, we have to think about some of the some of the wraparound services that the city could potentially provide, because shouldn't the library be 24/7? Like, yes, they'll probably be like, oh, you can go online and go get access. But even that digital archive or the digital library, it doesn't have everything, so you
But
can't print.
you know what?
You can't,
To your comment, I just want to add to it. If you don't have internet access, and if you don't have a device to go onto the internet, that 24-hour service is just a mute point.
Yeah, I know that they will say sometimes like you can still I don't know how this is supposed to work, because I heard someone say in a meeting, you can still use the Wi-Fi even if the library is closed. Am I gonna sit outside? Am I gonna pull up my car and double park? I don't know how that's supposed to work.
Heather, can I tell you, I've seen it happen on
No
North
doubt.
Forest Park Library. I mean, I literally, and I've seen it they come at night. There's like 4 or 5 different people, and they will literally have like cushions, sit outside
Hmm.
to get access, or they'll get it from McDonald's.
Yeah, at least you get some fries with that. But still, it's a terrible plan. It's a terrible plan. And I don't, right now, Kevin, I will tell you, there seems to be, with the current mayor, a very conservative approach to budgeting. The IBO, if you listen to people like Justin Brannon, who's on the budget negotiating team, and you listen to him, he was saying all along that X surplus existed. And the mayor was like, I don't know where you're getting your numbers. Turns out Justin Brannon was right, because he was using the numbers from the independent budget office. And there was this little chart, trying to find it, where they showed where they started as far as like what the IBO said and what the mayor was thinking, and how eventually they wound up coming together in agreement that that was how much surplus. We're going to have a surplus at the end of the year, which can be very infuriating when you're thinking about programs like this. So right now, it looks like the projected surplus is going to be a couple billion, $5 billion. And next year's projected surplus is going to be $1.1 billion. I don't talk
yeah,
city budget math, but
yeah,
yeah, I
I,
mean, so we should thank the council, and we should continue to push the council, because they are our best resource on some of this. We have a council member who is on the budget negotiating team, and we should never shy away. When we got our response back to budget priorities, and it said specifically, contact your council member, Christine diligently wrote letters to every single one of our council members on every single one of those budget priorities. And we did exactly what they said, so that they would be aware that this was something that we thought we needed, but that we needed them to help push it through, because we can't do
yeah.
this
So
alone.
I believe that the literacy programs, it's learning how to read is supposedly a priority for Chancellor Banks. This summer I'm going to try to get my kids, to the library when they have some workshops, but if they're on the weekday, it's going to be a little bit rougher. You know,
Yeah.
Summertime is critical, right? Between pre-K and kindergarten, there's a lot of work that parents have to also help with and do
Yes, because
ourselves.
there's a concern that learning erodes over summer. You lose that sort of momentum that they've been building all year in learning. And so libraries are really good partners for that. Especially when we don't have enough seats in Summer Rising. And I honestly think Summer Rising is just a good idea, because parents can then use that money that they would have normally spent, like Edwin is having to do summer camp at the Common Point. I still call it Central Queens Y. But where he could be using that money in another way, whether it be investing, whether it be paying down his mortgage, or whether it could be something else. And all of those things stimulate the economy.
Yeah, but
Um,
listen, look, we're enrolling, our
yeah,
5-year-old into after school next year, and so we're
okay.
paying out of pocket.
Mm,
But some of these things, like universal after school, universal summer rising, like more rising seats. It, I don't know what the narrative. I know what the narrative is right now. You alluded to it, Heather. I think we need to change that because the narrative from I don't know, from the funders or from city government is that there's no need for this. Like there's people don't want it. Like no, people want it. If they cannot afford it, they probably opt out of it. Like if they cannot
Yeah.
afford childcare, they just stay at home and they don't work. And you know what else can parents do? Like, and if they cannot afford after school, they just don't do it. And
Right.
so I think there should be a space for this. Like there should be more after school programs, more summer rising programs, summer rising
Mhm.
seats, because you know the demographics has changed in Forest Hills and Regal Park. You know, more and more families are moving in, and with inflation, with the cost of groceries, with the cost of rent and mortgage, all of this stuff, like it's impossible. And so to be able to advocate for just libraries and more schooling and more hours, like I'm all
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem too, Kevin, is that parents work really hard to have stability in their family rhythm. And when you have a program that could exist, might not exist, could exist, might not exist, fund it, take it away, fund it, take it away, parents aren't going to really opt into 3K because they're not sure it's really going to happen. And they can't have their kid set up for a program that's not going to be reliable. And there have been some kinks in it. We had a former board member whose child was awarded a seat at a local daycare through the portal, through the DOE. They had a second offer. They they let the second offer go because they had confirmed with the provider that indeed they had a seat and that they were indeed locked in. No more than 2 weeks later, they got a call. They no longer had a seat. What we deduced had happened was that they had overbooked on their on their families that opted in not through Summer Rising so they could charge more, and not Summer Rising, through the 3K program. And so they ran out of seats. They had oversold on one side, and the law regulates how many seats they're allowed to provide. So he lost his seat. So then the family had to then go try to sign back up again. And eventually they had to go out of pocket and pay for another program somewhere. When they had had a seat and they were good citizens, they called, they confirmed, it was confirmed. They went ahead and gave up their backup seat because they knew there was probably another family waiting down the way. And so there have been some real operational challenges too. So when you think about, and I think about stability a lot because I think COVID destabilized everything for people. And people are looking to get back into that steady, especially with wee ones, right? They need that stability. And when you can't trust that the city is going to actually fund or actually certainly give you a seat, you know, families are going to do what families have to do to make sure that they can keep their job, give their child what they need so that they don't feel guilty doing their job and making their kid go to daycare and not being home with them, you know? So this has been a real major problem. Um, so I know we've talked a lot about this. I know, Martha, you had other things on your agenda tonight. Um, is there anything else that you have as far as questions?
Actually, no, this was actually one of my main concerns.
Okay.
And that this pretty much makes up my agenda because, um, you know, there were too many unanswered questions.
Mm-hmm.
With we have funding, we don't have funding, we're taking away from this, we're taking away from that. And
Right.
I think we can wait till September to when we know when they have more information regarding the new constructs of the library. That's
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's not majorly important. And what I was what I really see as important is, you know, what are we going to do in the next 2 months with the libraries and the children and the families? So
Right.
I wanted to get and I wanted to get some type of answer so that we can send back to the neighborhood that this is happening, that this will happen. And unfortunately, you know, Fortunately, it's not going to happen, so I guess we're going to just have to wait.
Well, I like I said, our libraries are not our libraries, because we never had Sunday service, are not necessarily losing anything that they didn't already have. What I will try to, we will try to run down for you at our district service cabinet meeting in June are the services provided over the summer. We'll double check, make sure that they're getting the food. Christine and I usually have a little powwow prep, whether it be on the phone or via email, whatever works for us, because it's been a crazy month. And we'll make sure to get those answers. Do you have, in regards to your budget priorities, Martha, does your committee have any changes? One thing I wanted to share with you, and again, sorry, flight path, is that we did talk to Robert Holden when we met him, because the Rego Park Library is in his district. And we talked to him about our concerns that a bookmobile will not suffice during construction of the library. He is willing, and we have to assess how much this is going to cost, to try to fund a temporary library for Rego Park while that library is under construction. He did this for a library up in his district, where they opened up a temporary library at that mall, Atlas Mall. And so Christine and I have had some discussions about, open real estate that we could possibly have it in almost the same area. The building across the street is supposed to have, the new construction is supposed to have commercial on the first floor. That's been something we've tossed around. We now know that Rite Aid has vacated that corner property on 63rd Drive. It's going to come down to cost. One of the challenges that Christine and I have talked about in that regard is that the commercial property on 63rd Drive tends to, when somebody moves out or vacates a property, give it about 2 months, you got someone else in there. It's not like Austin Street, because Austin Street is so damn expensive. But 63rd Drive is more reasonable. So smaller mom and pops are able to kind of move in relatively quickly. So sometimes it's hard to like say, hey, this would be a good space. And then next thing you know, because you also don't want, you have to have a place that's willing to wait around until construction actually starts. Which, Christine, you correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't they like a year behind? Yeah. So
Yeah, construction,
gonna-
I think, is supposed to start the beginning of 2025.
beginning. So shovels
Or-
in the ground in
Well, no,
January.
the construction, I don't think shovels in the ground. I think the construction phase is starting in January. I'll double check. But
Where-
that's the
2025.
problem, is that when we don't have,
I'm sorry.
we don't
I
have
just-
a good start date, it's hard for us to ask someone, can you rent us this space when the library is under construction? Oh, sure. When is the construction going to start? We don't know, so that's difficult also.
And we've
Right.
been pretty firm with DDC, just so you know. Christine had a very firm conversation last week with them to express our frustration as to the length of this project, how we have been so patient. I think about like the fact that I've said this 1,000 times, this started in '94 when I moved here. I was broke. We had 2 fare zones at the time. I mean, and now my kids are graduating high school this month. It's insane how long this has taken. And it's also insane and inequitable that other communities have had libraries get improvements during that whole period of time. And we've just been sitting here waiting ever so patiently. So we're pushing. So what I was going to suggest in regards to budget priorities, unless you guys have things that need to change, is that Christine and I could go in and remove the budget priority for the annex, because we've already had a conversation with Robert Holden about funding that. Christine, would you think that was advisable?
Yeah, I think that's good, because the library has been very clear that they are not giving us that. And we just kept adding it, hoping that they would change their mind. So I think that that's good, because now we have more of a commitment from Bob Holden than we ever did from the library.
Yeah, or any other council member even. So that's good news.
It's great
And
news.
all the other, yeah, all the other projects, are stuff that is in progress, kind of happening, not completed. So it sounds to me like you guys would probably want to keep all those on there, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And this
Right.
actually just gives us another, um, this actually gives us another slot to put something else in that might get traction. So yes.
Okay, and what would that be?
Well, I think we have to speak collectively and we will have that conversation and we'll figure it out just in time when we need to make these changes. Or
Well,
actually,
the changes are due last business day of June.
okay, I will send out
So
an
if you
email
want to
to
do
the
it over
team.
email, if you want to
Yes.
do it over email, that's fine. We
Okay.
just need to get them by end of June, because what we do with these is we take your suggestions and your ideas and we put them together in a user-friendly survey, which Kevin will not be Google Forms, God help, so help me God. All things good. Because I mean, trust me, if you think you were cross-eyed, wow. I mean, I thought I was gonna lose my mind.
Well, I'll
We're,
send out an email to the people who
yeah,
were not
just
able to attend and let them know
perfect.
we now have an open spot. So let's see what we come up with.
Yeah, and if you don't, no harm, no foul, because we only get so many budget priorities. The other thing I was going to say is that we do survey the community and we do ask them for ideas. So if something does come up library related, we will shift that off to you. Okay, so that's easy. Do you have anything else, Martha?
No, I think we've
I just
pretty
wanted,
much wrapped up everything.
Oh,
I
Christine?
just want to clarify, I was just going back in my email with DDC. Construction is anticipated to begin in spring of 2025. So I believe shovels in the ground spring of 2025.
Well, Christina, love you, but a year ago, it was spring of 2024, remember?
I get it. I've been here a long time. I've seen this
Yeah.
project,
So
you
let's
know,
see.
for the last
I mean,
18 years, so.
we're so very frustrated, and we keep pushing DDC on this because when we think about this project, this is a project being done by DDC for Queens Public Library, and they're doing bunches of libraries. And we just keep getting their attention, and trying to get this pushed along. I thought we would be a lot further along than this. I think I mean, we've got the designs, and the thing is, the public has to see this, because part of my concern is that one of their designs was this big open window thing to bring light in, and I don't think they realized that the building next door is going to take away some of that light because it's a lot higher than the Shalimar was. So that's something for them to think about. And that building, by the way, I don't know if you guys drive past there as much as I do all the time, but I don't drive, I ride and walk, but they're really getting done. I was concerned at one point that they would both be under construction at the same time. That building will be done. I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't partly occupied by the time they start doing construction across the street. It's looking really good. And it's supposed to be affordable housing.
Yeah,
So we shall see.
2025. So we're going to be a quarter way into the 21st century. I don't know. To your point, this is how long this project takes. Yep.
I don't even want to think about it. Well, I do want to think about it, but I mean, it's just really frustrating because I remember when I first moved to New York in '94, I was going for an interview at a company that doesn't exist anymore. It's called Payne Weber. And if you were a good candidate, you were supposed to research. So the only place I could go was the Regal Park Library because I lived up right across the street from London Lenny's at the time. And I remember going in there, and really, when you look at it, it's changed a little bit, but not too much since then. And to think that, like, at that time, there were people I didn't even know that were talking about getting this done at that point in time, before the internet. This plan was in place really before the internet was a big thing. I mean, it was a little thing, but it wasn't a big thing, you know? It's just
I
insane.
remember like every year, like Karen Kozlowitz would put in some money, like everybody was putting money into the library and we were like, we're never going to have enough money to build this library because then the cost of the library goes up. And, up until you get to a point where you're committed to actually construction. So, I mean, since I started working here, people have been committing to like give money to the library. Never did I think we were actually going to get to the point where we had enough money.
Yeah,
But
Oh
then
my
I think
God.
the
Really?
mayor came in and he ended up like closing that gap at one of his, press conferences or whatever, but.
Yeah.
yeah, I really hope things are going to be different under Councilmember Holden. Like, get it done. Like, we're
Yeah.
ready.
And we probably need to reach out to him and let him know that this is sort of what we understand. Because he's good at holding people to things. That's funny, holding people to things. But we could really push. He seems very open to pushing, and if you follow him online, he's a toughie. So maybe we need him, like Jack Nicholson. We need him on that wall. So,
And I think I mentioned it one time. Elmhurst
Yeah.
Library. Elmhurst Library got built. I don't know behind the scenes, but you guys can find out and talk to Holden. That got built pretty quickly.
yep.
I don't know waiting 20 years, but I don't think they were waiting 20
No.
years. So
And
I
it's
don't
a
know.
beautiful library.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
beautiful.
And so how did they get it? How did they get it done? And that's just mind-boggling. And I think I don't know. I don't know how old that library was. Maybe that's part of it too. Maybe the Elmhurst Library is really, really old, and they had to fix it, whereas the Regal Park Library isn't as old. That could be part of it. But
I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is, the Wi-Fi that we use for our meetings at Borough Hall is compliments of Queens Public Library mobile hotspot.
wow.
Because yeah, and could I get one of those in our district? No. Where did I go? I went to Elmhurst. I checked it out myself.
And it worked.
But it works. Yeah, I just keep renewing it. I just have to remember to renew it online. And but good news is the community board is going to be getting its own hotspot. So that hotspot will be returned to the library. Toot sweet. Can't wait. Well, Martha, if there's nothing else, I can give you all back your